The first insult came like a slap, sharp and undeserved. "Move aside, old man. This line is for real soldiers." The words, laced with casual cruelty, hung in the humid air of the crowded bus terminal. Heads turned, but no one spoke. Some looked down at their phones, pretending not to hear. Others shifted uncomfortably, unwilling to intervene. The young clerk behind the counter smirked, as though the insult were a harmless joke. But the man who stood there, shoulders squared yet silent, did not flinch. His uniform was plain, stripped of insignia, his boots scuffed from years of use. A simple duffel bag hung from his hand. He was neither old nor frail. His face bore the lines of hardship, not weakness. His silence unsettled the crowd more than any argument could have. Across the terminal, a figure observed. A man in a tailored civilian coat, his bearing too precise to disguise. His eyes were sharp, his silence deliberate. He was a general, one of the most respected in the country, and tonight he was following a soldier who had caught his attention weeks earlier. He had wanted to understand something unspoken, something whispered about this man. And now, watching the insult fall and the soldier's silence hold steady, the general leaned forward in his seat. What he saw next would change everything. The soldier's name was Daniel Cole. To most, he was just another face in the anonymous stream of veterans who returned home from wars no one wanted to remember. His uniform carried no medals now, but his body bore the invisible weight of men who had not come back. He carried them with him, not in words, but in silence. It was that silence that unnerved people. In the barracks, he had been the one who spoke least but listened most. In the field, he had acted without hesitation, saving others while risking himself. And yet now, standing at a ticket counter where a young clerk dismissed him as an imposter, Daniel's silence was mistaken for weakness. The general, whose name was Marcus Hale, had not planned to reveal himself. Not yet. He had followed Daniel out of quiet curiosity, drawn by a story that had reached his desk. Whispers from junior officers, a letter from a grieving widow, and a report that Daniel had once carried an entire squad through the firestorm of an ambush without calling for recognition. Hale had wanted to see for himself what kind of man chose silence when the world demanded acknowledgement. Now he watched, unsettled, as the injustice unfolded. Daniel's hands were rough, scarred with faint lines that no lotion could ever soften. They trembled slightly as he pulled his wallet from his pocket, not with fear, but with the exhaustion of a man too long misunderstood. He slid his ID across the counter. The clerk snorted, tossing it back. "Anyone can print these. I said this line is for those who've served. Don't waste my time." The words cut deeper than they seemed. Around Daniel, the silence of the crowd grew heavier. No one stepped forward. No one defended him. Some looked away in shame, others in indifference. Daniel simply picked up the card, slipped it back into his wallet, and remained still. His eyes, calm and unyielding, held the clerk's gaze. It was a look that said more than words ever could. A look that carried the weight of deserts crossed in armor, of nights lit by tracer fire, of comrades carried out beneath flag-draped stretchers. But the boy behind the counter did not understand. He saw only an inconvenient customer refusing to leave. And still, Daniel said nothing. Daniel had once believed silence was survival. Years earlier, in the blistering heat of a foreign desert, silence had saved him. On patrol, silence meant hearing the faint click of a buried mine before it claimed the lives of his brothers. In an ambush, silence meant catching the tremor of movement in the brush before the first shot was fired. Silence meant survival, but it also meant sacrifice. It meant swallowing grief when his closest friend bled out beside him, whispering with his last breath, "Don't let them forget me." But Daniel had never spoken his friend's name aloud again. He had carried it silently, etched into his memory like a scar. Now, in this terminal filled with strangers, that same silence was mistaken for submission. The general's jaw tightened. He had seen disrespect before, soldiers forgotten after they returned home, medals dismissed as trinkets, scars hidden beneath sleeves. But there was something about Daniel's refusal to speak that shook him. It was not weakness. It was something else, an unshakable dignity that turned insults into echoes. And yet the injustice was not over. The clerk leaned closer, his tone mocking. You think wearing boots makes you a soldier? Real soldiers don't skulk around alone. They travel with their units. You're just playing dress up. A ripple of unease passed through the room. A few passengers glanced at Daniel with doubt now. The lie, spoken with such confidence, poisoned the air. Still Daniel did not respond. He adjusted the strap of his duffel, eyes steady, breathing slow. The general rose to his feet. He had sworn to remain hidden, to simply observe, but the moment pressed against him like a storm. He followed as Daniel turned away from the counter, ticketless, and walked toward the benches at the edge of the terminal. Daniel lowered himself onto the bench. The leather was cracked, sticky from the sweat of countless travelers. His back ached with the weight of the bag, but he did not set it down. Inside was something more precious than clothing or gear. An old, folded flag, worn at the edges, that had once draped the coffin of his friend. He carried it everywhere, as though to keep his promise alive. His silence was not emptiness. It was a vow. And the general, standing in the shadows, saw it. The minutes dragged. A few passengers whispered. Some pointed, their expressions torn between suspicion and sympathy. A man in a business suit shook his head, muttering something about imposters trying to get military discounts. The injustice deepened, not from cruelty alone, but from the apathy of those who did nothing. And still Daniel sat, still as stone. The general drew closer. He wanted to speak, but something held him back. Perhaps it was the way Daniel carried himself, like a soldier still on watch, refusing to break composure. Perhaps it was the fear that if he intervened too soon, the truth would not reveal itself. For truth has a way of demanding silence before it shatters the world. It came suddenly. A child, no older than 10, broke from his mother's side and walked toward Daniel. In his small hands was a crumpled paper flag, the kind handed out at parades. He held it out, wordless. Daniel's face softened. He accepted the flag gently, his rough fingers brushing against the boy's smooth hand. For the first time he spoke, but only 2 words, whispered low. "Thank you." The mother rushed forward, embarrassed, tugging her son back. But the boy looked up at her and said loudly, "He's a soldier, Mom. I can tell." The crowd stirred. Doubt cracked. And that was when the general stepped forward. "Stand up, son." His voice carried the weight of command, though he was dressed as a civilian. The clerk looked up, startled as the tall man approached. Something in his bearing made the air shift. The crowd straightened instinctively, sensing authority even before recognition came. Daniel rose slowly, unsure. The general's eyes locked on him. "I know who you are. I know what you've carried. And I will not let silence bury it any longer." A gasp moved through the terminal. Whispers spread. Recognition dawned. The man speaking was General Marcus Hale, a decorated commander whose face had been seen on national broadcasts. The clerk paled. "Yes, sir, I didn't know." Hale cut him off, his voice low but edged with steel. "You didn't need to know his name to give him respect. A soldier's honor is not measured by your recognition." Then he turned back to Daniel. "You've lived by silence long enough. But tonight, silence will no longer hide you." The general reached into his coat and withdrew a small case. Inside gleamed a medal, one of the nation's highest honors, meant for a soldier who had never come forward to claim it. A medal Daniel had earned years ago in the chaos of a forgotten ambush, when he carried 6 men out of fire alone. Records had shown the act, but Daniel had vanished before recognition could be given. The general held it up. The crowd went silent. "This is yours," Hale said. "And no clerk, no crowd, no silence can ever take it away." The terminal, once filled with indifference, transformed. Passengers stood, some with tears, some with guilt heavy on their faces. One by one, they straightened as though forming ranks. The boy with the paper flag saluted clumsily. His mother, eyes wet, placed her hand over her heart. Daniel's silence broke, not with words, but with the sheen of tears in his eyes. He did not reach for the medal. He only whispered, barely audible, "For them, it's not me." The general's voice carried for all to hear. "Then let the world remember them through you. Silent dignity is the loudest truth." The clerk stammered, trying to speak, but his words failed. His smirk was gone, replaced by the crimson flush of shame. He looked small now, swallowed by the weight of his ignorance. And Daniel? He remained still, medal in hand at last, the paper flag tucked gently into his duffel. Around him, the crowd had become a silent guard of honor, strangers united by respect they should have given from the start. In that silence, the injustice dissolved. When the bus finally arrived, no one boarded before Daniel. The general walked with him to the steps, then stopped, allowing him to climb first. Respect had shifted. The world, for once, bent to honor the quiet man who had bent for so long. And as Daniel disappeared into the bus, Hale remained behind, watching. He had followed his soldier in secret, but what he had found was not weakness, nor shame, but the kind of strength that reshapes the hearts of those who witness it. It was a reminder that the truest heroes rarely speak of their heroism. They carry it quietly, waiting for the world to see. In the years to come, that moment at the bus terminal would echo far beyond its walls. Passengers who had once stayed silent would tell the story of the day a general stepped forward, but more importantly, of the soldier who never needed to. The quotes carved into their memory were simple, unforgettable. Silent dignity is the loudest truth. For them, not me. And long after Daniel had gone, his silence remained, no longer misunderstood, but honored. Respect is not owed to titles or uniforms alone. It is owed to the unseen sacrifices, to the scars carried in silence, to the battles fought within as much as without. Too often, silent heroes walk among us unnoticed, dismissed, or doubted. Yet their strength does not vanish for lack of recognition. Daniel's story is a reminder that silence can hold more honor than the loudest boast, and that true strength needs no defense. Wherever you're watching from, take a moment to honor the silent heroes in your life. Share their names in the comments, share your reflections, and subscribe for more stories that uncover the dignity the world too often forgets.